So welcome everybody to the Early Childhood Development in a Time of Pandemic webinar series. Today's topic is prosocial behavior.
Well, I see prosocial behavior as something that makes us feel good, right? It's those behaviors that when the people around you use, you feel important, you feel valued, you feel good about yourself. So I guess that I wish you to be surrounded by lots of prosocial behavior these days around. Prosocial behavior. I like this picture when we see that little, two friends being together and we can say, they're having a good moment. And I guess that, prosocial behavior is all about this, kids feeling good with one another, maybe helping one another, but they're pretty young, those little children in that picture, to say they're really in, that sharing thing. So we'll be back on this. So I guess when we talk about prosocial skills, sometimes we use different words. We use social skills, we use social competence. And so I just wanted today to bring up those a few definitions. So social skills, and we'll be back next week if you're there when we talk a little bit more about peer relations and how to, a little bit more broader, we'll be addressing social skills. So social skills are really a set of different behaviors that include social emotional behaviors, but not only. So when we talk about social emotional skills, we talk about, sharing, being able to collaborate, with someone. But social skills are also about respecting rules. And it's even all about, what respect is all about as a whole. So taking care of the material I'm provided with, of toys. So it's very, very broad, social skills. We'll be back to that. Social competence is when we say, we're going to work on social competence. Well, it's one thing to know and those skills, and that we have been exposed to those skills, but it's another thing to be able to use them context appropriate in a context appropriate manner. So it needs adjustment. It needs that when I go to my grandmother, there are some rules that are different from those at my house and going to school and daycare centers and the park. But when we say a child, the social competence is there for him. We can see that he's adjusting. So it's referring also to the flexibility that we've been discussing with the self-regulation webinar. So it's not only to know them, but it's use them. Sometimes children, they will smile and they will do things, but children look at them and seems to find it a little bit awkward how they're doing. So sometimes, those behaviors, we need to teach the children how to use them and when to use them. Prosocial skills or prosocial behavior are really those behavior that are issued voluntarily to the benefit of others. So that means really that, I want to be pleasing someone. It's intentional, right? When I do this, I know I expect that my friend will be happy about this gesture. So prosocial skills is really about something that is, those behavior that aim to please others. So why it matters? So those skills, very briefly, we know that they are related to peer acceptance as a whole. So, children that are, when they say they are popular, children want to play with them. We can assess that, and it's called the sociometric assessment we do in some group classes and a group of children. But we know that those children that are chosen in those tests, like do you like to play with those friends, are those having a good set of those prosocial behaviors. So they engage more positively with others, and so friends want to play with them. They are popular friends. But also adults appreciate those children. And sometimes, those behavior for children having more challenges, let's say, about self-control, when they have that good dosage of, or they have prosocial skills, well, we tend to be more patient with those children. And it's something, it's like that's what we say, it's a kind of a protective factor, because children who are nice to others, they are appreciated, but also, and it's not because we're discriminating as adults around children, but we know that, it has that impact on our perception also, is, yes, it is challenging to work sometimes with that child, but you know what, he offered his help to me and he smiled at me, so that's why we think it's important for those children who do not have those behaviors, to teach them and to explain how it is important. So specifically, those behaviors are about pleasing others. They develop over time, and yes, there is a lot of individual differences linked to temperament, predisposition, all about that comes from our parents and genes and all of that. But I put a set of example of those behaviors. So it's about being able to smile to someone. Of course, when someone smiles at us, we feel good. Welcoming someone, this is not something that is natural. I need to be taught to do this. It's about sharing, helping others, offering comfort to others, and also protecting the rights of others and inviting friends. So, of course, we don't expect children to master all of this. And, as adults, we need to work on those behaviors when we enter a new group. But so those behaviors, they come as a good thing. Also, children that have entered a new center or new school, those children who use those strategies, they and also offer a suggestion of a new game. When they do it in a way that they don't impose that new game or idea, and propose and suggest and invite, they are well perceived by the new group. So linked to that, affected by that, and those are the two first things we have addressed in the last seminars. Parenting style, emotional competence, is related to more prosocial behaviors. Something interesting with the parenting style, being warm and responsive, and parents doing that or caregivers doing that, it has an impact on prosocial behaviors, but it's also a bidirectional effect. So there are studies showing that children using more prosocial behaviors may affect how their mothers, because sometimes the studies they target the parents differently. So those studies about mother could see that you have also another, the other way around, an effect on mother sensibility. The parents' own prosocial behavior seems to impact, and this is something about probably, I look like my parent. There's something about my parent that comes from maybe the genes, but also the model that my parent offer me is important in terms of developing those skills. Discipline styles, we'll get around that a little bit later, and parents' emotional competence and their ability to suggest ways how to deal with emotions are also related to prosocial behaviors. So, just before this slide, the first question that we address to you is, at what age you think that children really become prosocial? Or I don't remember the exact wording, so I don't know if, Pamela, we have some numbers coming in terms of statistic around that question?
Yes, out of 500 people who participated in this poll, we've got 331 people who responded that around 2 years old, like 80% of those who voted, says that around 2 years old begin to use prosocial skills. And 9% of the participants responded that right after their fourth birthday, children begin to use the prosocial skills, and 7% responded that around 6 years old. And lastly, 4% of them say that when they become less self-centered, around 8 years old.
Okay. You know what? It was kind of a tricky question, because I guess all of the answers were good, but let's look at in a developmental perspective over time, linked with the moral development, what we can see. I guess that the most participants said by age 2, and the first sign of prosocial behaviors really are observed. It's true at 2. It starts there, but you know what? At the very beginning of, well, around 6 months of age, children, there are studies showing that children prefer people or adults that they see offering help more than, you know, people destroying things. So this is something, you know, when this is made with puppets and, you know, animals that we use, and children, you know, we see that they tend to go more with some character than others. So there's something there about that we can see as a preference right from the start. But between the age of 1 and 2, we can see the first observation of signs of the feeling of guilt. And, you know, when we addressed guilt and, you know, not being punitive about the emotional expression, well, I guess that it's, you know, we know it's there. And some children, we may observe that it's more natural for them to be feeling guilty. And others, it may be different, but we can see as early as 1.5 years old, children really, they see something and they see that people are not feeling good, and they will put their fingers in their mouth and they feel bad. By age 2, those first signs of offering naturally or almost naturally help to others, we can see those movements of a child going with his blanket, you know, and helping a child and making sure that he feels good. So we can see, but it's okay that a child at 2 doesn't do that, right? It starts there, you know, it's around, those are things we see around those ages. So that's why all the answers were good in terms of, we don't expect a child to do all of this at 2. It starts, we observe those movements early on. By the age 3, they understand a little bit more that breaking rules, you know, it comes with consequences. And we can see that when others do that, children by age 3, they understand it's wrong, and they feel, again, they feel bad, and we can observe distress signs because they see, oh my God, that child is in trouble because he did that. So we can see that. But by age 4, they offer, you know, they just only see and feel bad about it, but we can see that they're very more active. So I guess people who answered, you know, around 4 or maybe a little bit later, it's normal that we answer that, because it's more, we see that more naturally, and they really seem to share and understand what sharing is all about. Then again, sharing at 4, you know, we often do it because we have, you know, there's some kind of a moral understanding around it, but also we want to avoid consequences, because we know that if we don't share a toy I don't do that with my brother or sister, well, I'm in trouble. The toy will be you know, up in the shelf, and I won't be able to use it anymore. So, you know, it's, yes, they understand more the needs of others. It's something in development, but we don't expect children to always want to share. And we want to say to children, you know, it's okay if right now you don't want to share. We'll come back a few minutes later, you know, and we'll see if you share to your friend or to your brother and sister. But so we see that, and you're totally true. Those prosocial behaviors, we see that those behaviors early on, but it doesn't mean that it's all because it's there to stay. Sometimes there are ups and downs around this. We can see you know, we addressed that last time, you know, there are aggressive behaviors occurring in our daycare centers, in our schools. And we can link the frequency of aggression going down with empathy and prosocial behavior. But there was a question around aggression on our poll. So Pamela, do you have some answers? We have asked at what age group we think, at which period we think there's more aggression.
Yeah, I do have 60% responded that it's between 18 and 24 months. And the rest, like 33% responded that it's during the year they enter school around 5 years old. Mm-hmm. And 4% responded that it's during middle high school, around 15 years old. Lastly, 3% says that it's at 12 years old.
Okay. And you know, those answers about later in life, in the general population, when we have polls, you know, people not working with children, not having young children, tend to say it's older, you know, that we see a high frequency. And we have addressed that in the last webinar. But aggression behavior, the frequency is really between 18, the highest frequency is about around 18 and 24 months. So we'll be back in a few seconds on that. So, there are ways to explain how come, you know, those aggressive behaviors go down with age, socialization, you know, understanding the rules, the moral development, but also it comes with, you know, empathy being more and more there for children. So just briefly, empathy as a definition is seen as is defined as an emotional response that comes with understanding the emotional state of another person. So it's not just about feeling what the other person is feeling. So the second box is around, you know, there are two components around empathy. An affective one, I can feel, and you know, those distress signs that we see on children is related to feeling. But then it also, you know, there's a cognitive component, and so understanding the emotion of others. So that's why by, you know, age 3, we see that children, even around 2.5 and a little bit more, they understand more the needs of others. They understand that others have intention of their own. But there's this understanding of things help, you know, the development of empathy, and also disciplinary styles. We'll be back to that. So empathy. So reduction of aggression linked to empathy and prosocial skills. So we know that supporting empathy is a good thing. It might be a key. But if we look at a little bit more in detail, aggressive behavior is complex, and you know, there's tons of things we can say about it. But in a few minutes, I just wanted to address that during the early years, there are two big a style of aggression that we observe in with our young children. One is called the proactive aggression style, and the other the reactive aggression style. The proactive aggression style, aggression is known and is described as an instrument. Aggression is used as an instrument to reach a goal. So, you know, I want to access this toy and someone is playing with it. Well, I will bite that hand that, you know, is holding that toy. And yes, it is an aggression, because if I'm, you know, I'm bitten, I can say it is an aggression. Of course, it's not intentional. The intention was not about hurting. The intention was about having access to something. So that's why we call this an instrumental type of aggression, and it's proactive because I have that goal of reaching out to something and I don't know the strategies yet, you know. So it's related to, I don't know those good ways of asking for something. It will come over time. So our target, you know, around proactive aggression is to teach those prosocial skills, right? Asking for something, sharing, waiting for my turn to come, etc. Well, this is more about self-control, but those skills, when we teach them, we can see the frequency of that type of aggression going down. And just in parallel, the reactive aggression is more about difficulties we have to deal with our emotions. So the explosions, you know, it's not that I want to hurt someone, but I exploded and my hand went out and I hurt someone. So it's linked with impulsivity. So our target is about working on emotional regulation and working to make sure that children develop more inhibition, so to lower impulsivity levels in young children. So it's just to say that, you know, our prosocial behaviors, they are very handy to also have an impact on lowering the frequencies of aggression. So more in picture, if you were there on the last week, you know that I use pictures to express some of the strategies that come from science. So the first strategy that is pretty much related to the development of empathy and prosocial skills as a whole is the use of a type of discipline. And, you know, we call it inductive discipline. It's not important, but you know, the word said what it is. It's making inductions with children about, you know, how to explain why this gesture, I think, was not a good thing. So I love this picture where I can feel that boy feeling bad about something that happened, and that the mother being there and explaining why it's not a good idea, the reasons why she's saying you should not do that, and also help the child to see the impact on the emotion and the distress of others. So have you seen, your sister, she was not happy, she was crying. So inductive discipline is about using those moments to try to make those understanding happen to children. So the reasons behind the impact that, they need. So it's a way, it's not about punishing, it's about explaining the impact of the gesture. For parents, and this is well documented, have those discussions about why we think as parents, and of course as educators and teachers, explain why we think that rule in our group or in our house is so important, and why we think, those transgressions may be harmful. So we see that the time we have, but this means, being available and having time, and as parents being very calm. So those maybe those types of discussion may be more difficult these days around, and in some households more than others. But so if we can support parents to just have those kind of discussions, or just to say, when you do that, this is a good thing, we're in the good direction with prosocial behaviors. More in a group setting, so we know that the investment that we make with each children, developing a positive relationship with each one of them, is something that is, we see so much wonderful thing happening, but sometimes it's more difficult with some children and in some contexts. And we know right now it is a context that if children start to go back to school and to centers, where there are some children that may be expressing less prosocial behaviors. So asking for help to make sure that we can still be in a positive relationship with that child also. And of course, try to see how we can work as a team with parents, exchanging strategies we use, asking for theirs, and also seeing if we can add some support for them or suggest some support from the neighborhood to them. The strength of a positive climate in a group, it's related, those prosocial behavior, they develop in the house with parents, but they develop a lot in our centers. And we know that the positive climate around children and all that we create as educators in terms of, we feel that sense of belonging is so strong. We have our group name, we have our song when, transition happen, and when it's time to go for lunch. And those, and relate that our group, we are the bees, and we are so proud to be the bees, and relating to those, the children as a group. We know that it helps the sense of belonging to occur, and it helps, and we can see more positive prosocial behavior happening in a group. Of course, every child is worth receiving support, and sometimes it's more challenging for some children, but it's the effort. And again, we don't have the expectation that they all master those behaviors, but those little steps that you encourage is so important for them, and because they are part of a group, the group comes out as a strategy as a whole, as itself. Encourage friendship. And I love this picture because if you look at it a little bit more closely, you could see that both children, they have their left hand on the same pile of cards. And there's something happening about, okay, I will share you that yellow block, but still I'm keeping this for me. So I thought it was expressing well what, prosocial skills are all about. We're there, but not that much. And, we're doing things, but we're learning from one another. And, we learn that if I go too hard on someone, I will be bitten. So there's something happening about moral development through friendships. And one of the key elements that we can explain the creation of the first friendship is physical proximity. So, though we have some kind of a control over this, we can choose who plays with who sometimes. And we know that by doing this, two children sitting near from one another, there are bigger chance for them to become friends and the best friends. And it supports prosocial skills. As just something, pretend play, it comes again and again and again as something we should go and do and encourage. We've talked about it with the self-regulation, saying that through a pretend play, children learn to plan ahead, learn to test strategies, and to say, oh, this is something I should not be doing anymore. With the emotional competence, we said that, around pretend play, there is something about emotional security that comes with it. We can express things there, and this is good for that. And for prosocial behaviors, sharing, pleasing others, because, this time my friend wants to be the lead player in what we're doing. There's so many things happening with play.
To open the discussion, I'd like to invite Kelly Stone, our CEO at Families Canada, to give some perspective.
Hi, everybody, and thanks again for coming today. This is great. It's a chance for us to hear some of the incredible information that the Centre of Excellence has on offer as our great science partner, and a chance to share some of our resources with you. I hope you will go and look them up. And most of all, just thank you for coming so we can have this discussion. I see there's a bunch of questions on there, so I won't prolong it, but I did have a couple of my own. I wondered about children where the parents are not reinforcing the behaviors that we aspire to for these children, and how do you teach them prosocial skills in that circumstance, be it during the day, at daycare or in one of our centers, when you know that the child is not getting that reinforced at home?
Well, I guess also it comes with, for some children, if their models are not, as present home, and is it worth it? All the work we do within our centers, but studies, they show that children, they learn those behaviors, yes, at home, and it's a good thing to have a parent who is warm and sensitive, but then again, they develop them. If they have not developed and if they're not exposed to those behaviors at home, they develop them within our centers. And this is great news for us. It gives us, this for me, it motivates me to say, well, that child, it's a good thing if we can work with him on that. And, yes, the rules, and, as a parent, it's difficult to maintain always the rules, the clear rules. And, sometimes there are so many things happening. So that good moment, that quiet moment, sometimes it's challenging, and these days around might be difficult. So, and of course, we're saying, well, children are not these days in the centers. When they come back, we have that opportunity, to bring that up, and we have, just by making sure that we encourage a positive climate around children, use maybe a little bit more positive reinforcement than usual to create something around it, so they feel good about themselves. But we can see that no matter what are the differences in the families, if you work on that from centers and from schools, you can see those behavior happening.
Thanks a lot. And there are some really interesting questions coming up in the chat. If I could just summarize the gist of it, there has been a couple of questions around, and you did answer it a little bit just now as well. In this time of the pandemic, with physical distancing being the norm, how would you promote prosocial behaviors and friendships?
If I have access to children, this is the problem. They're not in our center these days, and distanciation. So as a parent, I guess I would just, remember what are those behaviors. And, it's difficult to practicing welcoming someone these days is difficult in our houses. But then if we call a grandma, if we call somebody, or somebody's calling us and we ask our child, do you want to come and say hello, right? to grandma, and if we can access some screens and to share, through Zoom, oh, you're smiling to grandma, this is a good thing, and because those behaviors, they happen, and then they stay if they are reinforced. So I guess we need to be very creative these days, and it's not about proximity these days. Forget about this. We know it's not happening. But then, all that, you help me. Oh, I see that you want to help me to set the table. This is good. Those are all behaviors that are around prosocial skills and can be differently, but supported even in this. But of course, I need as a parent to be available, and the stress, we anticipate that the stress is very high right now in some households.
And maybe what you said about pretend play could also be useful in that. Another question, or a few questions actually in the chat box, was about developmental stages. And not everybody follows the same path along the age brackets that you were showing. So what about children who are on a different developmental stage, and or has less developed skills in, say, emotional expression or language?
Is it so important? Those guidelines are very big guidelines, and it's only guidelines saying this starts from this age, but we can learn those skills, all lifelong. And so it's not that, we have that window of opportunity and then it's past. No, but we know that, children not using those behaviors when they enter school, at school entry, they will need to learning fast, because, their friends will be saying, hey, we don't play that way here, and you wait till your turn for your turn, and you share, you too, and so they learn it, right? So I guess with some challenge, children having different challenges, like in, say, language delays, it will come. It will come, and we use more pictures, showing, and be very, very clear about those signs, what it means to be a good friend. It's not only you're a good friend because you smile, you ask, you offer help. So, and having those images that explain that, and there are studies showing that we can develop that, but sometimes it's come a bit later in time, but it comes, and it needs to be encouraged. And even with adults, and even with my 24-year-old son, I guess there's still work to do, but there, it needs to be encouraged. It's linked to reinforcement received also.
Okay, we have come to almost the end of the session. Isabella, do you have any final thoughts?
Well, as I was saying, those behaviors, they make us feel good. And children, when we use them more with them, they feel good about themselves, of course. But we need to be, I don't have the word in English, help. What I want to say is to be good with yourself and not to put too much pressure on yourself about this. So we do what we can these days with our children, and we do it when the children in our centers will be back. We'll do the best we can do, but every small things we do, and it comes with, like you were saying, play, encouragement, having a song, something that relates to our group. So we need to say to ourselves, we're in the right direction. We know we do the good things, and can pursue doing those small things.
So thank you to everybody who joined us today. We hope that it's been very useful to you. Thanks, everybody. See you again. Bye.